BOYLE Sports.
Hello and welcome to On The Wire, brought to you by our sponsors BOYLE Sports, as we look back at the Dublin Racing Festival and look forward to the Cheltenham Festival with those major form clues. We've got a brilliant cast of guests to talk us through the big races at Leopardstown and give you their selections for Cheltenham in March. Our sponsors, BOYLE Sports, are also giving out sign-up offers for our British-based customers. If you bet £10, you're entitled to £40 worth of free bets. Bet 10 to get 40. Terms and conditions apply. You can look down in the description down below to avail of a brilliant sign-up offer. Yes, delighted to be joined by Gavin Lynch, Donn McClean and Mark Boylan to have a little bit of a look back at the Dublin Racing Festival, with mostly our eyes now on Prestbury Park in March. We'll start off with the Sunday action, and the first grade one was the Ladbroke Novice Chase. All eyes were on Final Demand, Gavin.
Yes.
He fluffed his lines. Kay Doughty won the race, but there was also an eye-catcher back in second with Western Fold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Final Demand, his jumping just didn't match what we'd seen at Navan. He wasn't very impressive in Limerick and bad ground. This was bad ground again. And once he got taken onto the lead around the 6th, 7th last by Kay Doughty, he just kind of folded under pressure a little bit, made a few mistakes. Willie said afterwards that maybe it was the ground. They're going to try a few things differently between now and Cheltenham. He's hoping that the real Final Demand in his eyes will show up. Kay Doughty was excellent. He jumped a bit to his left at Fairyhouse, jumped brilliantly at Leopardstown. Had the race won 3 out really, and then Western Fold, who was never put into the race, had been off for 90 days and he stayed on very well. On ground he definitely didn't like. You have to remember that, you know, he's got some very, very good form going back to Affordale Fury, the guy we played. He'd love good ground. 7-1 each way in the Brown Advisory. He definitely have a chance. Now it's a very, very open race. I think they're going like 4-1 the field, which is great to see. A lot of people thought the Final Demand might go off 2-5, etc., but that's not going to happen. So yeah, it's opened it up a lot. I think Western Fold at an each way price would certainly have a squeak at 7-1.
Yeah, well, it's interesting with our sponsors, BOYLE Sports. They're giving a chance to be backing Western Fold at industry best price 8-1 up until Friday 7 o'clock. Max best £25. So make sure to look down in the description at the link below to get your hands on that if you do agree with Gavin on Western Fold. Don, talking about Final Demand though, it's almost written in his contract that he has to go off favourite for every race that he's in, but where would you stand with him based on that pretty ordinary effort at Leopardstown?
His jumping, as Gavin said, wasn't very good. It had been. I thought it was good at Limerick. It was really soft ground. I thought he met every fence in his stride. It was very good in his beginner's chase. But no, like he was sent off at 130 on shot here, fully expected to go and win it. But it was obvious from quite early in the piece that he wasn't going to do it. By contrast, Kay Doughty was very good. It was the second time wearing cheek pieces. He wore them in the Louis Fitzgerald Hurdle last year at Punchestown. And he went on at the third last. And yeah, it was an impressive performance. It's only his third chase as well, so he could go forward from that. And Western Fold, he's a really unusual novice. He's run 11 times over fences. He won a Galway plate, as Gavin said, off a mark of 148. And yeah, this is his first run back after a break on ground that should have been way too soft for him. And he stayed on really well. I suppose you're kind of thinking that he's fairly exposed as a novice, and there could be one or two others in the Brown Advisory Chase who have a more progressive profile and could improve past him. That said, he's got all that experience under his belt. This was a big performance on his first run back on ground that was softer than ideal. I know we're having all this rain, but you have to think that Cheltenham is going to be better ground than we had at the Dublin Racing Festival, and that'll suit him. Jury's out a little bit on Final Demand. Interested in reading Willie's comments there yesterday about, trying a few things, do something different, try and get him back to where he was either last year as a hurdler or the performance that he put up in his beginner's chase or in the Faugheen Chase. So I wouldn't give up at all on Final Demand, but yeah, it definitely opens up the Brown Advisory Chase picture.
Yeah, it certainly does, Mark. Are we a little bit inclined to look over Kay Doughty? I feel in an awful lot of the kind of post-race analysis, there's been a lot of talk about Final Demand, a lot of talk about Western Fold, and very little talk about the horse that's actually won the race very impressively.
Yes, that's fair comment, Andrew. Yeah, and as a hurdler, he was a horse that was really pleasing Willie Mullins all along, but never actually reproduced what he showed at home over hurdles. And I think a big factor of that is when you watch him, even to when he won at Punchestown last season, he had no regard for a hurdle. Like, he's such a burly horse. He's a fair beast to look at. And I'd say he just kicked him out of the ground. This is actually making him tune in. Cheek pieces back on him as well. They were on him at Punchestown when he won over hurdles off the first 2 days this season, and it was a very complete performance. And I think a team as well with some of these JP winners and DRF weekend that we'll speak about, so many of them were positively ridden, changing tactics with some of them. This guy can be kicked out the gate, but like Narciso goes out and effectively makes all. Majborough, no messing out in front. You know, this guy, similar business, eyeball and Final Demand. I think there's a few little things that definitely helped bring out improvement here. Jury out for me at Final Demand as well. I'm just a little bit concerned, is he slightly soft when it comes down to the crunch, albeit I have a lot of respect to Paul Townend's comments yesterday. He said when he rode him at Navan, he says he was nothing like that horse when he sat on him at Leopardstown, and I wasn't over impressed at Limerick either, for all that he got the job done. Gold Dancer doesn't hold that form in a huge light. So yeah, we're probably not giving the winner enough credit, but at the prices now, it's blown the whole race wide open.
Yeah, intriguing race, the Brown Advisory, as is the Supreme Novices Hurdle, and we got a few clues for that race in the Tapsos Ireland Novice Hurdle. Don, talk the talk, given how the race panned out. Ballyfad and King Rasco Gray were up in the van all the way. It really didn't suit Talk the Talk the way it all materialised, but he still managed to get up and win.
Yeah, I thought this was a massive performance, Andrew. There were so many things at play here. It was interesting to hear Joseph afterwards saying that they were going to ride him in behind regardless, and they recognised that might be a tactic that would get him beaten in the race, but they were going to do it anyway for the horse, for his longevity, for the longer term, and not just for Cheltenham this year, but for beyond. Like, he's only a 5-year-old, so he's a horse with a massive future. And yeah, they went no pace in the race, a finishing speed of 113% according to Race IQ. And Talk the Talk was 8th with 2 furlongs to run. So it shows you the ground he made up. And even JJ7, he didn't get overly vigorous with him until after the last. And he just got there literally on the line. But the race, as you would expect, it was run at a slow pace. It was over 13 seconds slower than the mare was later on, which we'll get onto now in a second. But the final 4 furlongs was over 7 seconds faster. So you'd expect that as well. But it just shows you that they did quicken up. And Talk the Talk made his ground into a quickening pace. He beat 2 really good novices in Ballyfad and King Rasco Gray, and they came clear of the 2 horses that finished first and second, the Royal Bonfire and Cocktail Brew and Blake. So the form is stacking up really well in terms of the novices in Ireland. Of course, we don't know how they're going to compare with the British novices, and that's going to be fascinating to see. Old Park Star, how the Supreme novices from here measure up. It was only his 4th run over hurdles, his dams the house to Goshen and to Ellie May. So he's a nicely bred horse as well for Simon and Isaac Swade. He should come forward from this. Interesting, Gordon saying that Ballyfad maybe could go out and trip. And I thought that he showed a lot of pace in winning over Christmas. He quickened up again off a sedate enough pace from the front. He showed a lot of gears to win that day. And he came about, I think, 9 lengths clear of his rivals. But Talk to Talk outspeeded him coming from behind him. So to me, it was a massive performance from the winner.
Yeah, no, can certainly echo that. Gavin, when you're looking at this race, how do you feel this race will stack up from a Cheltenham perspective? Obviously, Talk the Talk, big chance in a Supreme, potentially Ballyfad in a Turner's, and King Rasco Gray has got the option of the 2 as well.
As Don said, 13 seconds slower this race than the Champion Hurdle, 10 seconds slower than the Handicap Hurdle, and 6 seconds slower than the Mayor's Bumper. So it was run more or less at a crawl, and to be able to sit so far back, he was 8th, jumping the second last, to be able to switch out, gain 3 or 4 lengths from the home turn, 2 lengths from the last, against good horses Ballyfad and King Rascal Gray, who are up in the box seat off a slow gallop. You'd like to always be up at the front. So for Talk the Talk to come there and do them on the line, nobody thought he'd get up in the photo, but he did. JJ Slevin was about 6 inches from a bad ride to a good ride. His jumping was the problem before this. He didn't jump well at Christmas. He obviously jumped the last quite high and came down, but before that he didn't jump well. He made 4 mistakes at Christmas. His jumping here was much better. The fast run Supreme should suit him. You're going to have Old Park Star, etc., up near the front. He just wouldn't want to give them 4 or 5 lengths of the bend in March, that's for sure. But he's 4-1 for the Supreme. I think there's lots in the Supreme that have chances. You know, Leader Dahlia, etc., etc. There's a number of horses in there that have squeaks. But Talk the Talk, if you're getting 5-1 each way on the day, I wouldn't put you off. That's for sure.
Mark, interesting from Willie yesterday at this press meeting that you alluded to. I thought his comments about King Rasco Gray were fascinating to Gary O'Brien, where he mentioned that he felt of the front 3 in that race, he'd be the one entitled to the most improvement. So there seemingly is a school of thought in Mullins's camp that horse can still improve past those two in front of him.
It's funny you mention that, because that was something that pricked my ears too. I was typing up the copy for the Irish Shield this morning, and one of the line he actually gave us was that he thought of the 3 horses going to the final hurdle, his one looked a bit like a pregnant mare in comparison to the other two with condition. So maybe for me, having napped him at DRF weekend, thought he was a bit of value at kind of 3-1, see him drift from 5-2 to 11-2 on the day. Perhaps that element where they felt there was improvement in him is part of that drift, and maybe you can upgrade the run with that in mind. I still thought he had every chance at the last, and kind of 2 better ones beat him, been totally impartial about it. I thought he ran his race, but you have to respect from that camp when they do feel that way. I came away from it from perspective of Talk the Talk thinking he's enhanced completely reputation. I had doubts over his jump, and he put that to bed. Loved the fact he was able to win a race that he could easily have lost. Ballyfad, I'd be with that thinking he up and trip would definitely be a help. I don't see why he would turn around the form with Talk the Talk on better ground next time with that type of trip. So I think that would make sense. I'd be interested looking a little bit further back there. Cocktail Brew got back on track. He finished 4th, and he's got 4 runs over hurdles so far, Andrew. And he's also in again next week at Thurles on Thursday. That could be a 5th qualifying run for a handicap at Cheltenham. So he's rated 140 already. The handicap, you'd imagine, in Britain will add a few extra on top of that. But in a time of year where it's difficult to find novices to run those handicaps, I thought he was one that could be well worth watching next week at Thurles, with a view to maybe a Cheltenham handicap.
Our sponsors, BOYLE Sports, are always trying to make your job as a punter easier. And if you're a new customer in Ireland with BOYLE Sports, you can get up to €70 worth of free bets. If you bet €10, you are entitled to €70 worth of free bets. Terms and conditions apply. Look in the description down below to avail of a brilliant sign-up offer. Next race we'll be covering is the Ladbroke Dublin Chase. Look, Majborough was absolutely superb here, beating Marine Nationale. Looked like probably a career best, or definitely a career best from Majborough. Gavin, do we believe that he can back that up at Cheltenham, potentially on slightly livelier ground?
Yeah, I thought there was 3 outstanding performances for the 2 days. Majborough, Narciso has, and Fractifile. Majborough on the Sunday was just absolutely brilliant. 10 out of 10 performance. Marine Nationale was nearly in trouble going to the first. He got squeezed. He was never going with any vigour. He was always behind the 8 ball, struggling to get back into the race. But Majborough, the change of tactics, wearing the cheek pieces, worked a dream. When you go back to his Arkle run, obviously we know what happened there with mistakes. Same with Cork. And at Christmas again, he wasn't foot perfect. But this time, making the run out in front, he was awesome. Is he going to do it again? If he does that again, he wins. The ground will be different. So the conundrum you have, he's 6-4 at the minute. Like, he's definitely not going to go off odds on, not a chance in the world, unless there's injuries. But if the current field stands the ground, he'll go off something like 6-4. So I don't think there's any hurry, but I'd say maybe some of the shrewdies will probably be backing him after about 4 fences when they turn down the back straight. If he's got a soft lead, now I'm sure by that stage he might be 4-5. But top class performance, you just wonder, is he definitely going to do it again? He's going to get competition for the lead. They're going to go lickety split to the first 3 fences. Better ground, so it's going to be it's a fascinating race, the Champion Chase this year.
John, me and yourself were at Barry Connell's on Monday talking to him about Marine Nationale. He was, as you come to expect with Barry, relatively bullish about his chances, but I think he even himself had to admit that Majborough really did blow him away at Leopardstown.
Yeah, look, you always come away from Barry's with a very positive feel about his horses, but I think justifiably so. Marine Nationale, like he's still the title holder. His colours were lowered here by Majborough. But yeah, like it was really an awesome performance by Majborough, as Gavin was saying. Like it just blew you away. Cheap pieces on for the first time, let him roll. That was Mark Walsh's idea. Willie Mullins was very quick to give the credit to Mark Walsh for that idea. And he didn't jump to his left, which to me was key. He jumped to his left and in his other chases. And I was thinking going into the race that if he jumps to his left, he's going to end up on the worst of the ground at Leopardstown. That didn't appear to be the case at Leopardstown all weekend. The ground seemed to be uniform all the way across the chase track, but it didn't matter because he didn't jump to his left. But he had this race by the scruff of the neck from early. Solness couldn't get to the front, and he just careered away. The time was really, really good. Marine Nationale, I mean, you're kind of going, so how is he going to make up the 19 lengths by which he was beaten? I think better ground will definitely help him. Also, he's 2 for 2 at Cheltenham. He won a Supreme. He won the Champion Chase. Also, his four best runs, Marine Nationale's 4 best runs according to Race Most Ratings, they're all on good to softer yielding ground. So the better ground is going to help him an awful lot. And the pace that he showed last year, I know Calixius was upsides when he came down at the last, but I think he had Calixius' measure, and the way that he sprinted up the hill, he came right away. And I think in the end, John Bond was stayed on to take second place behind him. But it was a seriously impressive performance last year, and he's going to go in this year. He's 9 years old now, but he's only had 9 runs over fences. He's likely raced. He's only had 3 runs over hurdles as well, so he's a very likely raced horse. And the jump index, like Majborough's jump index was 9.5. He gained over 16 lengths jumping. Marine Nationale lost 4 lengths, 4.7 lengths jumping, and he was beaten by 19. So if he can jump as well as Majborough jumps at Cheltenham, there's your 19 lengths right there. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I think Marine Nationale would get closer to Majborough in the champion chase, but I still think that Majborough is the right favourite.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment, Don. I think one thing that's interesting to me, Mark, that I see I don't see anyone ever mention it, considering we always talk about Gaelic Warrior and Leopardstown. Marine Nationale 1 from 6 at Leopardstown, 7 from 8 at every other track. So is there anything to it? I feel potentially the 2 mile 1 at Leopardstown almost stretches his stamina to a certain degree, especially on that type of ground.
It's an interesting point, yeah. I think partially the thing with Marine Nationale last season, the defeats at Leopardstown, Barry Connell felt he was playing catch-up as a horse that was technically a senior chaser, but had only had a very limited number of runs the previous season as a novice. So felt that the improvement you were seeing run to run was more related to, catching up on the older horses rather than, necessarily being trained for a day. So I'd have that as a factor in a couple of the defeats last season. You could argue maybe at Christmas, if he didn't make the mistake, could he have won? But he still did make the mistake. It's a fair point, and Cheltenham is the place that has just been bringing him to life. I'd look at this race and I just thought Majborough, in a complete sense, it was John's touch on some of the metrics there with jumping. I was looking at the sectionals, and his second last furlong is so I think he takes nearly 6 lengths out of the field from the 2 to the 1, and again from between the Marine Nationale and Majborough from the final furlong to the line, another 6.5 lengths he's quicker than him. Like it was just to go as quick as he did early and still have that kick late. It was the complete display. I would look at Cheltenham and feel from an Ante-Post point of view, this race is quite treacherous, because for all that we are working on the basis that likely we're going to be dealing with better ground come the spring, that'll help a Marine Nationale. It's not a guarantee. Like we've been there years in an Ergamine coming home in the rain. You have your back in Marine Nationale Ante-Post. I do feel I'd rather wait and think about, a weather idea very close to the time. I just think at the moment that angle is so clear cut now. I feel that he is not at his best when you do get the dig in the ground. Even at that, the record of short price favourites, if you're a Majborough backer, with a view of the overall champion chase picture, it is also murky water too. So I think it'll be a race come the week of it. You'll have a far better idea of ground. If it was soft ground, maybe you can go and roll in behind Majborough good and strong. If it gets quicker, does a mistake, get punished far more sinisterly, I suppose, for Marine Nationale or for Majborough. So it's for me a late play, but we just learned here that when Majborough has all the factors together and puts it together, the figure he can run to is enormous, and he's now the joint highest rated horse in training in Ireland himself. In fact, to file on 174, serious stuff.
Yeah, he was absolutely electric around Leopardstown on the Sunday, as was Brighter Days Ahead, who won the Irish Champion Hurdle. I do feel the whole lossy mouth, will she, won't she, is slightly being done to death. So more so concentrating on Brighter Days Ahead, Gavin. Can she win a Champion Hurdle?
Yeah, but the big question is, will Lossy Mouth run in the Mayor's Hurdle? Only joking.
You're killing me here, Gavin. You're killing me.
Look, at Brighter Days Ahead, of course she can, but everybody will point to the 2 runs at the last 2 Cheltenham Festivals, gets beat in the Mayor's Novice Hurdle. Last year, Gordon reckons she was injured or got injured at Cheltenham, so maybe you can discount that. And again, a lot of people will point to the fact that she needs soft ground to be at her best. She stays very strongly. She's won over further. I just want to point out one thing, is that 14 months ago, do you remember the day she won with 30 lengths at Christmas? She put Statement firmly in his place that day. The time of the race was 3 minutes 45. Now, if you can find many hurdle races in Leopardstown over the last 20 years that are quicker than that, point them out to me, because there's not many. So she can go on any ground. It's just, it's been a strange champion hurdle season this year with Stateman not there, Sergino not there. It's 5-2 the field. She's 5-2 joint with the new line. She can win it, but at the moment, I definitely couldn't be having a bet in the race. If I got a free bet, I still don't know where I'd go, if you know that sort of way. There's horses there at Cheltenham I do like, but just the champion hurdle to me is a minefield. I'd sooner back in Maiden Hurdle in Gorham Park on Saturday than the champion hurdle at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah, I can echo those thoughts. Mark, do you believe Brighter Days Ahead can win a champion hurdle?
Oh, it definitely can in the year that we're in. I think it's a year that's ripe for something like this to happen. Do I want to part with cold hard cash at the prices is another question. I think looking back through trying to find a horse that maybe was beaten on its first 2 attempts at Cheltenham, trying to win a champion hurdle at the third go, and I'm thinking maybe Binocular possibly having been beaten in a Supreme, third to Punjabi, but they were much more comprehensive efforts than Brighter Days Ahead produced. For all that we know that the Golden Ace run now in a Mayor's Novice Hurdle, we were pulling our hair out on the day wondering how did she get beat. It makes a lot more sense now when you see the mare she is. I'm looking at the racing overall, Andrew. I'm thinking we learned with Final Demand that maybe his form is a slight question mark over it. We're thinking now, New Line, what race is he priced on for his champion hurdle? It's probably last year's Turners, and in that he beats the Yellow Clay and Final Demand. I don't know what price the Yellow Clay would be in a champion hurdle picture, and maybe it's a very broad brushstroke to look at it that way, but he obviously has all the potential, but I feel the value is not there in him, and you're taking a chance on Brighter Days Ahead too. I actually think Golden Ace still isn't getting the credit. I still think she is the one that if you said hand on heart, which of them think will turn up and will be there in the 3, least questions to answer, she's probably it, because and it doesn't feel sexy to put her forward, but I actually think I can rely on her to not put the mockers on her, to jump very soundly, to handle the track, to put together a complete performance. And I know State Man was going to win at the last year, but I don't think it was going to be by a crazy margin. I think she was coming home, and he was, he still would have won, but he wasn't going to whack away by 10 lengths, I don't think. I think she's probably still the one that has no chat around her. Brighter Days Ahead, last year's run, it was all wrong. And the way Gordon Elliott's year has gone, you take a lot more encouragement that the whole year has been far smoother for her.
Don, quickly, your thoughts on the champion hurdle division?
Yeah, look, on Brighter Days Ahead, it's a small sample size, isn't it? 2 runs and disappointing on both occasions. That said, you always prefer to see a horse having performed well at Cheltenham going into a Cheltenham Festival race, especially a champion hurdle. But look, if you want to make excuses, the pace in the Mayor's Novices Hurdle was all slow, and I think she was watching Jay de Grugy and vice versa, and Golden Ace went and won it. And as Mark said, Golden Ace was a better mare than we thought at the time, much better. And then she just, it can't have been the track last year. She was never traveling. It wasn't her running. And if Gordon says that, she wasn't right, she came home not right. So if that is the case, or if that is the reason why she underperformed, then she could be an inordinately big price now for the champion hurdle. Yeah, Lossiemouth, probably Mare's Hurdle, I'm sure that's the way she's going to go. I thought Polyross was interesting, actually. This is his first run since the Queen Alexandra Stakes. He's a Triumph Hurdle winner last year. He was 100 to 1 when he won the Triumph Hurdle. Got the rules in the race changed as well. And okay, he's a 5-year-old. It's hard for 5-year-olds going on, taking on their elders in their kind of sophomore year. But I think Willie did this with Lossiemouth. He started her back quite late in her 4 to 5-year-old campaign. And likewise with Polyross, I'm sure it was deliberate from the summer. And he stayed on. Well, he actually clocked the fastest final furlong. So look, Willie Mullins yesterday said if he finishes in the first 5, he'd be delighted. I think he could do a bit better than that. He's a Cheltenham horse. He'll come on from this, and I just think he could be a little bit of a lurker in, as the lads are saying, a wide open champion hurdle picture.
So that concludes the Sunday action of the Dublin Racing Festival. We'll be looking at the Monday after this. One of the other great offers from our sponsors, BOYLE Sports, is best odds guaranteed, applying to all singles and multiples. You can get BOG on all singles and multiples at BOYLE Sports. So let's get started on the Monday action from the Dublin Racing Festival and what that will tell us going forward to March at Cheltenham. The Nathaniel Lacey was the opening race with Dr. Steinberg, a very, very impressive winner. I was trying to kid and cajole Paul Townend into convincing Willie Mullins to run in the Albert Bartlett for my wallet's sake. I must confess, Mark, come to yourself first. I thought he was very impressive. I didn't think the race was up to much, to be honest.
I think both things can be true. I think he was impressive without it being a deep race. I think you're looking back at the ratings of the likes of the Love Me Tender there. I don't even think Santos Osprey really fired either. So it was a good opportunity on the day, but I loved how he took it. And I think even the way he raced over Keane didn't really give an optimum chance to himself at that trip. I thought he stayed very well. And I'd be with you. I think he's Albert Bartlett kind of written all over him for that point of view. And it's an open race this year. It did come up in discussion yesterday in the Lord Baglan. We spoke with Willie Mullins. He said the Turners, his impression when he walked off the stands was, if he's as keen as that, maybe we're looking at the Turners for him. Everybody seems to tell him then that it's Albert Bartlett. He's considering that. But he said it'll come down to whether Paul Townend feels there's a tactic he can employ in the riding sense to get him to switch off better in Albert Bartlett, to not have him tugging hard for 3 miles. That's the difference in where the race call is going to come from. And ultimately, a rider as good as Paul Townend, when he was able to win on a Jasmine DeVoe last year, and you have a chance to kind of a favourites ride in Albert Bartlett, I kind of think it makes sense that he go there, but far be it for me to tell Willie Mullins what to do with them. I don't think there was a huge amount in behind that you would say immediately would jump up and give him trouble in a Bartlett sense. Still wouldn't give up on something like a Santos Osprey with another run if he was to get into a Cheltenham handicap again, but you are running short on time, and it wasn't a huge effort. Kazansky didn't run badly, but I'm with you in general assessment of this race. Not deep, better renewals in previous years. There was no latest exhibition probably to mention, no favourite of yours, but I do think Dr. Steinberg has Albert Bartlett in an open year. Very easy to see him going there, bang, big chance.
Gavin, anything in behind that would strike? I thought Frankie John on a bit of nicer ground might be something interesting for a Martin Pipe, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps. It's interesting that Mark there was telling Willie and Paul Townend where to run the horse, so that's good. I'm only joking. Dr. Steinberg, he ran in a bumper last May in Ballinrobe. He got beaten a bumper in Galway in July. He then wins a decent maiden hurdle against your horse in Galway, and he's very, very good in Navan. Beats another one of your horses, Andrew, the Devil You Know, trained by Paul Nolan, and was very, very good here. He was a 9 out of 10 performance. The only reason you wouldn't give him 10 out of 10 is it wasn't a strong grade 1, was it? Kazansky fell in the grade 2 against County Final Limerick at Christmas, got bet since. Lovely Tender was stepping up and trip. Did he stay? It's hard to know. I've backed Dr. Steinberg to the Bartlett, so I'm really hoping he goes there. I think he's got a good chance. Last year there was 20 runners in the Bartlett. I'm not saying there'll be that many in it this year, but there's generally like 15, 16 in it. So if Paul Townend convinces Willie to go on it, I'm sure he'll sit 5th or 6th, trying to get him to switch off. He was very keen. I know that he was a lot bigger in running, halfway around. It was a very good performance. He's, 11-4, I think, to win the Bartlett. It's probably a little bit short, but he's the right favourite. And, between himself and the Devil You Know from Navan, the two of them are going to run huge race in the Bartlett if he goes to that race, yeah.
Yeah, Don, it does look like that Navan race at the moment seems to hold the key to the Albert Bartlett betting. People are kind of latching on to that, and I suppose the form after that would indicate that they're two strong horses.
Yeah, and he was very good at Navan as well, Andrew. Like, he stayed on really strongly up the hill at the end of 2.5 miles on softer, heavy ground, and beat the Devil You Know, who looked like he might be coming to win the race. But the Devil You Know, as we know, went on and won the River Don Hurdle Grade 2 race, won it really impressively at Doncaster. So the form was rock solid. And Dr. Steinberg, I think he seems to have surprise connections, because he only won one of his 4 bumpers. As Gavin says, that was at Ballinrobe during the summer. So to now be 3 for 3 over hurdles, to win a Nathaniel Lacey as well. And watching the race live, I was looking in behind. I was thinking he can't win given how keen he is on the ground over the trip. But he just kept on finding and pulled right away from Kazansky. And I know, Kazansky beat County Final, who was beaten in the handicap, but that wasn't his running. I think he came home lame. And Kazansky, that was the Doran's Pride Hurdle. It's a grade 2 race. It is generally a good pointer to the Albert Bartlett. So Kazansky, maybe, like the Albert Bartlett, it can be quite a dour race in which it's survival of the fittest really on several levels. But Kazansky, I wouldn't give up on him for that type of race. But Dr. Steinberg, yeah, like, it's hard for a winner of the Nathaniel Lacey race to come back and trip for the Turners, I think. Like, it's 2 miles 6 on heavy ground, or this year on heavy ground. Like, you've got No Drama Descend and Mighty Park maybe, Skylight Hustle, Ballyfad maybe, like pacey horses over 2.5 miles. And the Turners is generally a race for pace over 2.5 miles as opposed to salmon over 2.5 miles. And Dr. Steinberg, like, interesting that Willie was saying yesterday, if Paul can convince him that he can get him settled through an Albert Bartlett, then that's the race for him. And like, I agree with you. I think the Albert Bartlett is the race for him, and it's a case of just getting settled through the early part of the race. And however he does that, settle him in front maybe, or settle him in behind. But I think he might struggle in the Turners, but I think he'd be a massive player in the Albert Bartlett.
I'd agree completely with that. Gavin, the Juvenile Hurdle was an interesting race on paper going into it. Narciso Haas again, Monch to Narciso Haas. This is as good a Juvenile as we've seen in a while, I think. Just the way he does everything. He jumps so professionally, he settles, and he stays very well at the trip.
Yeah, and also I think it's very interesting that Patrick Mullins gave a mention of this horse back maybe September, October time. And he made the point that they got this horse last maybe April or May. Normally they get horses from France maybe in September, and then it takes a while to fit into their routine, whereas they got this horse much, much earlier than normal. So that was good. He turned the form around with Monge too. He was £4 better, worse off for Fairy House, but he turned the form around by 10 lengths. So Obviously, as is typical with Willie, they improve and improve. He was very good at Christmas. You have to remember he got a solo here. He jumped fantastic. He won very easy. Selma Davari, Willie reckons that she would improve tons for this, so she must have an each way chance. Proactive was very, very good in Fairy House. But yeah, Narciso has, he's 6-4 for the Triumph for the moment. And obviously there's a lot of people have backed him. And I'm sure he'd be very popular on the day because he's going to love the 2 miles one, which the Triumph Hurdle is. It's on the new course. He'd stay forever. And as Willie mentioned, he's a fine big horse, so I'd say he's going to be a gorgeous chaser in time too.
Yeah, looks in kind of the mould of a Majborough or along those sort of lines. But Mark, as Gavin mentioned there, Selma Davari, first time out for Willie Mullins. To be fair, she came with a relatively decent reputation. She sided through runners at 2 out with a majestic jump, and she ran a very, very creditable race.
Look, I came away really impressed, Andrew, and how well she went, I think, is reflected that she touched 2-5 in running, having been sent off 17-2. And you look back on how well she's quickened up as well, fastest individual furlong at a race, faster than anything from half a mile out to the line. But as you mentioned, when she arrived here from France, she was highly thought of. And as Gavin has rightly pointed out, the line from Willie afterwards in the post-race debrief, he had said she missed a lot of time, and I think she'd improve a good bit from that run, green going to the last. And, there's 4.5 lengths to find, and I get it. Narciso has, yes, he is a comprehensive 4.5 lengths. But for a filly, that if you think there is improvement to come in her naturally, whereas I'm looking at Narciso has, and he looks kind of the finished product just now. Maybe there's another level in him, but I actually feel there's greater scope for Selma Davari to improve on this than Narciso has. And the market has probably got tight. A lot of the juice has gone out of the price, kind of 7-1 for a Triumph now, Selma Davari. But I really think that she will give him something to think about in March. I really like the style that she went about it. And I come away more positive with her. Narciso has rock solid, but she just could be anything. And Majborough, he was beaten in this race, third in his Irish debut, and won the Triumph, turned it around. It can be done.
Yeah, it certainly can be done. Don, I don't associate you with backing too many at short prices, but would you be for or against Narciso Has?
I think it's hard to pick holes in him, Andrew. I was with Monge too here, thinking, as Gavin was saying, she was better off with him at the weights, having beaten him at Fairy House, but and the degree to which he progressed from that to Christmas, and then again on to here, he's progressed again. And yeah, he looks like a bit of a monster. He's a bit Majborough-esque, isn't he? Just a big strapping horse who's going to be a chaser, but is also a very talented juvenile hurdler. There's every chance he'll improve on this again. And as Gavin was saying, the extra trip will suit him. The stiffer test will suit him. He's going to be going out and trip over fences. You would guess. But no, this was a fairly comprehensive performance. But no, I agree with you on Selma Davari. Like Richie did an interview with Racing TV before the race, and he said that she hadn't done an awful lot at home. She was going to improve on it. And he was delighted with her run, as Willie Mullins was as well. So yeah, you can see her coming forward from that. It's a little bit Majborough, Carghese, that type of trip, that type of duel between the two of them. As Mark was saying, like the spring juvenile hurdle, I think beaten horses in the spring hurdle do better in the Triumph hurdle than winners at the spring hurdle do. So that's a stat just worth bearing in mind. I think Selma Davari will come forward from this, but Narciso Hall will probably come forward from it again. And yeah, I can see the two of them being the two big players in the Triumph hurdle again. Monge too, interesting that Gordon was talking about maybe going to Fairy House or maybe something else. So he's kind of saying he doesn't see how he's going to beat Narciso Hall, and that's fair enough. It's hard to see it from this. But no, I think Narciso has the right favour for the Triumph hurdle. But Selma Davari is, yeah, she's attractively enough priced, I think, at the minute.
Don, I'll stay with you for the Irish Arkle. A very intriguing 3-runner race. Romeo Coolio and Carghese certainly went hammer and tongs down the back. And hard to know with Carghese. She could have been a little bit unlucky after that mistake at the last.
I thought she ran a massive race, Andrew. Like the mistake at the last, watching it live, I certainly didn't appreciate the magnitude of it. But when you saw the overhead shot, you could see she really hit it. And it obviously would have taken the energy out of it, but it also stopped her momentum, and she had to get going again. And she got going again, got to within a neck of Romeo Coolio. Now, what was the extent of Romeo Coolio idling, and what was the degree to which he was tiring? It's hard to know. Probably a combination of both. But again, on Race IQ figures, she lost 0.19 lengths at the final fence. It was her only minus of the entire round of jumping. She had a 3.07 second recovery time. Her next slowest at all the other fences was 1 second, and that was at the first fence. So it just shows you the amount she lost at the last fence. And she's a Cheltenham mare. She's run there twice. She finished second behind the aforementioned Majborough in the Triumph Hurdle, and then she won the County Hurdle last year. I think the sharper test of the Arkle will suit her. This is 2 miles on a furlong on soft ground. The Arkle is 2 miles, barely 2 miles on probably on better ground at a speed favouring track. So if Romeo Coolio does go for the Arkle, I can see her reversing placings with him, and I think she's a big player in the Arkle anyway.
Yeah, I can understand that. Gavin, did you watch this race with a feeling that we were seeing an Arkle winner?
You know, when they went by the line, you weren't thinking that. I'd be against Romeo Coolio because he's had the 4 runs. He's gone to Down Royal, wins at Fairyhouse over 2.5, 2 runs at Leopardstown. You'd love to see him if you owned him and you were short a few quid. You'd run him in the Willow Warm at Fairyhouse, wouldn't you? Because he'd be very short priced to win that. But the owners buy horses. It just shows you the appeal that Cheltenham has, that they don't care about anything else. It's just Cheltenham only, and he's going to have his 5th run, which is quite a lot. Cargis was good. I felt, the mistake of last. Paul was very kind to her for a while. It took him maybe 100 yards to really get stuck into her, to get going again into top gear. If he got going a bit earlier, he might have got there in a photo. As Don said, she was good last year in the county off 141. She's going to get taken on to the lead by possibly Kopek Board, and certainly by Irish Panther in the English Arkle in 3.5 weeks' time. So yeah, she has a squeak. See there, she's 5-1. Yeah, she would make reasonable appeal each way at that, but I wouldn't really be with Romeo Coolio anyway.
No, Mark, what are your thoughts?
Really like Romeo Coolio as a type. I don't think any horse has won 3 Grade 1 novice chases as early in the season as he has in Ireland before, so hats off to him. But I don't think either of these will win the Arkle. I think Lulamba and Kopek de Board just set a better standard. For all that you're taking on trust with Kopek de Board, that there's going to be a few more of these explosive schooling sessions somewhere along the way in between. But they're both absolutely horses you'd love to have, but for the tested hand, I feel the others are going to go there with Kopek de Board has proven he's a better hurdler than Romeo Coolio, and Lulamba, I think the tests he's passed has been greater than what was achieved here. Trip is not going to be ideal for Romeo, and I just feel Cargis, lovely filly, but probably has a little ceiling against rivals like that. So while appreciating it was a great spectacle, don't think we saw the Arkle winner for Cheltenham.
Now, Mark, we'll stay with you for the Irish Gold Cup, the feature of the weekend, really. Factor file. I didn't think, 3 miles around Leopardstown, heavy ground was really going to be his bag, but it was. He was back in the groove he was when he won the Ryanair, and pretty much all the way round you would have wanted to have been on him.
I would have had similar reservations with him, but he did start in the 2.5 mile bumper for Willie, which would indicate stamina. And I did a piece previously in the field with Donnacha Doyle, who had him for his point-to-point. And I asked him about a Gold Cup trip once, and he says, we thought he was absolutely out and out there. We thought 3 miles plus was everything he wanted, So it's funny that he took this shape and had the pace for a Ryanair the way he did, because they viewed him from very early on has been a dour stayer. So it was finally for a kind of coming of age performance, I'd say, for Factor File. Even if he has a big CV, this was just the most complete he's ever been. And I think it makes total sense that there's something meant for the Gold Cup now. I understand there's a conversation to be had, but I thought coming off the stand watching this, I felt he has to go Gold Cup, and Gaelic Warrior, wouldn't he take some beating in Ryanair now? But it's a strong position for JP to be in. I still think Spillane Tower is a bit overpriced in the Gold Cup picture if they end up pointing there. I think that's he's lively still for all this improvement needed. Galopin de Champs, much willpower. If willpower could get a horse over the line, he would have been fighting at the finish. But I was a little bit disappointed that he didn't come forward in the way he did from Christmas, albeit we all had flagged in advance, I suppose, on this podcast, feeling that he would need a much higher standard from his Christmas run. There was a mention the cheek pieces could go on him at the press morning yesterday at William Mullins in the Gold Cup, and the way he travelled over the first few fences in Cheltenham last season, I think that could be a reasonably good shout as well. I think there was a few disappointments in the race, but fact to file, if he produces that kind of display again in Cheltenham, it will be a proper one to lower his colours. But Gaelic Warrior, having raced as keen as he did, big effort from him, but I just think he'd take serious whacking in a Ryanair.
Yeah, I think that's the intriguing bit about this race, looking at it, Don, that is Willie Mullins going to leave the Ryanair behind? I just find that very hard to believe, considering he has Factor File, Gaelic Warrior, Galopin de Champs. They could all, Iron Maximus even will probably run in the Gold Cup. Surely one of Factor File or Gaelic Warrior runs in the Ryanair, and you'd think it might be Gaelic Warrior.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the way it panned out, Andrew. One of them, you can argue the case for either horse, for either race, Gaelic Warrior or Factor File. I think it'd be a shame if the Irish Gold Cup winner didn't run in the Cheltenham Gold Cup. And he was so good. Like, he was fastest through the last 4 furlongs, fastest through the final furlong as well. So he really saw it out strongly. in the end. It's another 2 furlongs to go at Cheltenham, 3 miles, 2.5 furlongs. And he was so imperious in the Ryanair chase last year, put up one of the performances of the whole season in the Ryanair chase last year. But you'd kind of be surprised, wouldn't you, if Connections didn't just go and allow him to take a chance in the race. Gaelic Warrior, by contrast, like he did see this out well. He's an Arkle winner. He's an Aintree Bowl winner as well, over 3 miles and a furlong. And he was only beaten by 2 noses or 2 short heads in the King George. So you can argue that he could be a Gold Cup horse, but I think given that he was keen here, wasn't he, through the middle part of the race, or through the early part of the race anyway. So maybe dropping down and trip to 2 miles 5 for a Ryanair, that could suit him really well. Galopin de Champ ran a massive race again, and he's 10 years old now. Couldon's the last 10-year-old to win a Gold Cup. Or a Cheltenham Gold Cup. That was in 1998. So he is trying to confound the stats. You wouldn't give up on him. You can see him running a hugely admirable race again. Just maybe there'll be younger legs in there now. I'll be able to get the better of him. And it's not ideal. His preparation is normally Savills or John Durkin chase onto the Savills. And it's only a 36-day break between the Savills and the Irish Gold Cup this year. It's 39 days now between the Irish Gold Cup and the Cheltenham Gold Cup. So a little bit longer of a break. But I think more than that, it was his first run of the season in the Savills chase over 3 miles, not in the John Durkin over 2.5 or less than 2.5. So I'm sure Willie Mullins will freshen him up now and get him going again, and he'll be ready to go again. But you just fear there are younger legs in there that might have his measure. I thought Firefox did well to get as close as he did. There was a breakaway group of 5 that went off down the back straight, and he wasn't in it. He was the only one outside of that group of 5 that was able to get in among them, and he stayed on really well. It was interesting that Jack Kennedy rode I Am Maximus instead of Firefox, so he obviously surprised Connections as well in getting as close as he did. So, like, he could be definitely an outsider in the Gold Cup picture. It's hard to see him winning it, but you can see him maybe outrunning his odds a little way. But no, like, fact to file, brilliant performance here. Super weekend from Mark Walsh, and you just hope that they'll put him in the Gold Cup now.
Yeah, Gavin, your thoughts on fact to file?
Oh, absolutely brilliant. Top of the bus. Fantastic performance. I don't see why he can't go to the Gold Cup. 12, 14 months ago, his 2 runs at Leopardstown over 3 miles, he wasn't a strong stayer. He came there to challenge the last. But he had been quite keen during the race, and he didn't finish out his 2 races at that time. But like myself and Don, the older you get, the calmer you get. So he's starting to calm down a bit. He's a 9-year-old. This was just an amazing performance. I think he likes, as a horse, I don't think he likes being held up. I'd forgive a horse any bad run at Kempton personally, because it's just a track that you get into a rhythm or you don't, and he didn't. I wouldn't worry about that so much, but I think he's a horse that likes to get involved. You saw him last year in the Ryanair where he's sitting second and third, etc. He got involved here nice and early, maybe 5 out, took it up. Willie was saying afterwards he was kind of thinking, Jesus, he gone too soon, but this was a remarkable performance, absolutely top class. I'm very surprised that he's 7-2 and 4-1 non-runner bet for the Gold Cup. I think that's really good value. I think that Gaelic Warrior, I would imagine, will go to the Ryanair. And I see there, he's 6-4, right? If you do the double there with BOYLE Sports, our sponsors, at 6-4 and 7-2, it's 10-1 the double, non-runner, no bet. I think that's a hell of a price, to be honest. As Don said, Firefox ran a cracker. First time at 3 miles, ran on to be 4th. Galopin de Champ definitely did improve from Christmas, because after Day of Fury wasn't able to cope with the pace, and also he finished 11 lengths clear of I Am Maximus, so I think he did improve. The fact that the fact file is a 9-year-old, I would imagine he'll go to the Gold Cup and they'll supplement him. And I think unless the ground ends up very, very soft, if it ends up good to soft, I think he'll win it. And I think, for example, all the horses that are entered in the Gold Cup at the moment, if they ran in this race at Leopardstown, I think Fact to File would have been first, and I think Gaelic Warrior would have been second.
Yeah, no, I can certainly see that. And if you are a fan of Fact to File for the Gold Cup, BOYLE Sports are going 4-1 non-runner no bet until Friday at 7 o'clock. So make sure to get a hold of that and avail of it if you do want to. 4-1 non-runner no bet does seem a good price on Fact to File. Obviously, does need to be supplemented for the race. Just as the final thing before we leave you, a couple of handicappers to potentially follow, or a few other horses that maybe caught the eye, Mark. I know you have a couple.
Yeah, you're going to kill me now for saying them again, but like Waterford Whispers the run at the DRF was definitely one that I'm going to give final chance to. In fairness now, when we put up for a Paddy Power, he didn't run in the end, but the way Henry Bromhead's team have been quiet over the winter, the deep winter, I should say, which does happen, and he always comes out of it in tip-top shape come the spring. But I think from after New Year's Day, he's only had 2 winners. And for this guy to show such a big run such a dramatic step forward over fences in a race that is often a pointer towards big handicaps. I think he's 20s for a plate and he's 12 for a Jack Richards. I think he'd be very dangerous in that, especially when you think back to his course form over hurdles in a Martin Pipe just touched off a few years ago. I thought in the county hurdle picture, there was a nice run there. Hello Neighbour, a little bit under the radar. I thought he's 33s, I think, for a county still. But I thought he ran quite well. And if that's where they point him towards, you look back at his Punchestown form last season in a Grade 1 Juvenile with Lulamba, Poneros, who Don has mentioned in a champion hurdle capacity. I wouldn't be surprised if Hello Neighbour, that kind of would make sense as a plan potentially. But I just liked elements of that run on ground that's deeper than he really wants. And actually won in that Leopardstown chase as well, I think sponsored by O'Driscoll's Irish Whiskey. Back Me or Sacre Me, the winner, I think he's a big player in the National Hunt chase. But the fourth, D Capo, if you haven't got a chance to watch him back, I thought that was a big step forward from him again. Even he's been a horse that's improved all this season, thought of as a decent young horse, just lost his way slightly, but he's really back on track now and got an extra pound for finishing fourth. But God, I came away from it encouraged. He's still only a young horse as well. I think he's just 7. Obviously weights, he's creeping up all the time. He won a nice handicap at Punchestown, but Irish horses don't have a great record in the ultimate. Maybe something like the plate for him, if that could be an option. I just really like the way he's taking steps forward, and there could be more to come from him. So there's 3 kind of big prices: Waterford Whispers, D Capo, and Hello Neighbour.
Gavin, anything that kind of caught your eye in potentially any of the other races?
The first thing to do is to go out and get a baseball cap, and one of those, those false moustaches, the ones you can get in a joke shop. So go into one BOYLE Sports with a baseball cap, and the next one with a false moustache, and then the next one wearing a suit, and then a tracksuit, and try and avail of as many of the 25 quids on Factor File, non-runner bet at 4-1 between now and Friday evening if you can. In handicaps, I like Fabry Deschamps 2 at 4-1.92 each way in the cross-country chase. You're getting 4 places. If you're going to do a few each way doubles, I think you have to throw him into it because he can't be out the first 4 based on his last run. He was very impressed with the Paddy Power, even though he's not young, but anyway, he did it recently. And I like 2 horses in the same race at 7-1 each of 2. Trusted Trader Plate on the Tuesday. McClory at 7-1, I think, if he goes there, would have a good chance. But Madara, Dan Skelton is a target trainer. So Madara got a target trainer's ride the last day in Kempton, a pre-Cheltenham warm-up. I remember backing him in the December Gold Cup off 140, which is now, 14 months ago, and he was only just beaten. He's back at a rate of 140. He's had a run over 2 miles. He did a very nice run the last day, we'll call it, in Kempton. He's off 140 again, and he's going to have the cheap pieces back on the next day. He's 7-1 each way in the plate, so 2 each way doubles for you. Madara into Fabry Deschamps 2, and maybe McClory into Fabry Deschamps 2, and definitely the double with a Gaelic Warrior into Fact File at 10-1. I think that's good value.
Yeah, very good from Gavin, and an awful lot of sincerity there in target trainer when it comes to Dan Skelton. Don, out of the entire weekend, what would you be most kind of looking forward to bringing forward to Cheltenham?
Yeah, one that may not feature in Cheltenham, but I thought ran really well in defeat was Damas Cottlestan in the Paddy and Maureen Mullins Mares Handicap Hurdle. She was well out the back early on, or she kind of got a little bit short of room on the run across the top of the track over the second last. And it was a race that wasn't run at a great pace, finishing speed of 109%. But I thought she did really well to stay on as well as she did, to finish second behind Cousin Kate. And Cousin Kate, she's a really progressive mare as well of Dennis Hogan's. But Damas Cottlestan stayed on, and even on the run-in, Cousin Kate went across to the far rail in front of her, and she had to check and come back around again. She was only beaten 3 parts of a length, and she won her previous run at Punchestown off a mark of 98. She was racing here or at the Dublin Racing Festival off 113. And proved that she was well able for that type of mark. She's now 118, so a £5 hike for that run, which was fair. She's only had 5 runs over her. She's only a 6-year-old, so she's just a really progressive mare now. Gavin Cromwell's. I see she's entered in the beginner's chase at Ferryhouse on Monday, so I kind of had a handicap hurdle in mind for her off 118. But if she goes down the chasing route, I just think she's an improving mare, and wherever she goes, she's going to be of interest. And the other one, a little bit more obvious, is Jacob's Ladder. I just thought he was very good in winning the 2 mile handicap chase, 2 miles and 1 furlong. It was only his 5th chase. He won the Michael Purcell hurdle last season, a grade 3 race over hurdles. He'd finished second behind Capishi Pike in that grade 3 at Punchestown on his previous run when he outran his odds. He had Predator's Gold behind him in 3rd place that day. And he seemed to get stronger as the race went on here. The Capishi Pike race was, I think, 2 miles 3.5. The race at the Dublin Racing Festival was 2 miles 1. But he stayed on really strongly, so I wouldn't mind seeing him going up to 2.5 miles. He could be a horse for either the Novices Handicap Chase or the Plate at the Cheltenham Festival if he goes there.
A big thanks to Don, Gavin and Mark, as we've kind of marked your card from the Dublin Racing Festival. Looking forward to Cheltenham. Make sure, if you did enjoy this video of On The Wire, to like and subscribe to the Racing TV YouTube channel down below. We'll be back very soon for the big Cheltenham Festival preview itself, so make sure to not miss it. We'll see you again very soon.
BOYLE Sports.